Equity Summit, which is a new brand name for us. We're going to try that out. Happy to meet you all virtually from wherever you are in the country. We are going to be recording, as you can see now in the chat. We've been entering these things here. So we want to acknowledge that you, by being here, are agreeing to participate in that recording. We're going to be sharing this on our website and in other spaces through our YouTube channel and other things. We're very excited to introduce you or reconnect you or just have you with us with the various members of our community here in the Twin Cities. Folks doing amazing work that we're very pleased to amplify and highlight for all of you. Very grateful that they've agreed to spend this time with us. Just as an FYI, there was a little bit of a timing mix-up, so some folks might not be able to stay with us the whole time. We're grateful for those that can. And of course, we look forward to many, many continued conversations moving forward. We also want to thank the Minnesota State Arts Board for supporting us with this particular event as part of our ongoing work here in the Twin Cities and the state of Minnesota. So thanks to everybody. I'm going to introduce my team member here, Damian Strange, our Director of Community and Belonging, and welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for the panelists for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. Hello, thank you for joining us for this conversation. We've been chatting for some time today and in the spring, you know, one of the things that we are really happy to do is convene these local artist leaders, given the challenging year that we had in 2020 with the global pandemic and the murder of George Floyd and the aftermath. One of the things that we've been thinking about is the role that these arts organizations, these community art organizations, play in really holding community together, providing those communities with a place for healing, for a place for sharing stories, for organizing, and really for collecting and maintaining the history of the communities. But one of the things that we also know is that quite often these leaders who perform this valuable role in our communities don't get a chance to talk to each other about the work that they do. And you know, some of the things that affect these organizations are things like space. How do you maintain space? How do you get space? How do you think of different systems outside of the traditional nonprofit structures that may be more appropriate for our communities? And so I hope that the discussion today will give you some insight into these conversations and how these organizations deal with the challenges and celebrate the successes. And so we have 3 leaders with us today, and we will have 4 leaders with us tomorrow as part of the summit. Today we have with us Kino Ival from Black Table Arts, Alejandra Tobar Alatriz from the Root Springs Retreat Center, and David Hamilton from the Cedar Cultural Center. So what I'm going to do is each of the organizations have submitted a video about their work, and so I'm going to introduce the organization with that video, and then, well, actually, I'm going to start by introducing the leader, and then play the video, and then we'll have a conversation about their work. So let's get to it. Oh, and if you have any questions that that you have for our artists, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer them. So I'm going to begin with Kino Ival, and Kino is someone I've known for quite some time. I've watched him develop as an artist. I was very much connected to Shay Cage will be on the panel tomorrow in True Roots and the work that they were doing with young poets in the community. And that's when I first met him, and I've gotten to see him develop as a poet and writer. I would say philosopher too, and just a tremendous art organizer. Um, and so let's learn a little bit more about Kino. Um, Kino is the founder and director of the Black Table Arts Cooperative, which is located in South Minneapolis.
Recovery.
Oh, he's also the editor of A Garden of Black Joy, Global Poetry from the Edges of Liberation and Living. At its core, he is a facilitator of empathy and imagination. Very true. Kino's work hones on the literary arts and the Black radical tradition as curriculum for the future. He has received the Verve Grant, the Beyond the Pure Fellowship, the Emerging Writers Grant, and the Spoken Word Immersion Fellowship for his work. His essays are available at mnartist.com through the Walker Art Center. So let's welcome Kino, and let's play the video, which I believe is a video about the opening of Black Table Arts done by our local CBS station here in the Twin Cities.
Running.
Good boy! We'll be responding to calls for service as we were before the incident, and really I'm happy to say it seems like he's almost better than he was beforehand.
That looks like live video. Let me, if you want to start talking, I can find out what happened with that website. My apologies.
Oh, no worries. Well, Kino, one of the things I know, again, like I said, I've been watching your work for a long time, and I know that that the Black Table Arts, before it was able to obtain this space that you have now, was just this I would call it a movement that you began a number of years ago. So I wonder if you would talk a little bit about sort of that journey, and how you come to this place to have this beautiful new space in South Minneapolis.
Absolutely. And hey, everybody, thank you so much for being here. It's a joy to sit with folks, to sit in community with folks who've been in the community for so long, and to be on a panel discussion with other phenomenal arts leaders who keep our community together. Yeah, so Black Table Arts started in 2015, and we existed as a container for Black folks in the state of Minnesota to joy out loud, and to practice out loud a certain kind of joy of artistic craft and political education. And we did that in partnership with various venues around the state, like the Loft Literary Center, the University of Minnesota, the Illusion Theater, Mixed Blood Theater, various venues that saw something in the practice of gathering a kind of Black togetherness. So we did that for 6 years, and our cooperative is, and we always try to say that it's explicitly connected to an uprising, right? That it is a byproduct of extended support from around the country that saw something in a Black organization that's been doing a thing for 6 years, and thinking about how can we sort of continue that kind of Black togetherness. So we got our first building in February in South Minneapolis on Minnehaha, and really we see ourselves as a hub, a political home for Black artists, that we say art keeps the enthusiasm of social movement alive. There is a quote in one of our walls of the co-op by Suzanne Césaire, and I would love for more folks to be in tune with Suzanne Césaire. A lot of folks tend to know her husband Aimé Césaire, but she was a surrealist poet writing between World War I and World War II. And the quote is, "The revolution will construct itself in the name of bread, of course, but also in the name of fresh air and of poetry, which often amounts to the same thing." And I think what Suzanne is saying there is that poetry brings alternatives. That within the poem and within the social poetic, we find that we have a reason to hope, because poets have ideas. Poets says, you know, the rent is too high, or we don't have access to our gardens, or these classrooms don't fit us, so we can create new ones. And within that sort of realization, you get surprised, you know, when you go to an open mic, or when you go to a community poetry reading or a festival. And I think that that's just the role of art, to remind us that there's a reason to hope, that we have alternatives and we have ideas, and our little cooperative is trying to be an extension of that work. So
That's amazing. Very powerful words there. It looks like we have the video ready, so we're gonna play the video, so folks can get a little bit more and see that beautiful space. Really, it is. I mean, you did such a great job with creating this very welcoming environment. So let's check that out, and we'll hear some more in a second.
Celebrating the grand opening of working space for Black artists. The Black Table Arts Cooperative sits at the corner of 37th and Minnehaha Avenue in South Minneapolis, not far from the heart of the unrest that happened following the death of George Floyd. WCCO's Mariel Mose shows us how this space will be used as a place to heal, just as much as a place to work.
Each space is named after a Black writer. So this is the little Lorraine Hansberry reading nook. On the walls,
For Kino Evolve, this new space is a passion project he's been working on since 2015, when he first brought young Black artists together following the death of Michael Brown.
There was a void that needed to be filled in Black folks in Minnesota, having a space to talk about our joys and our grievances.
The purpose of Black Table Arts Cooperative lies in its name, a place for Black artists to have a place at the table.
So to keep a promise to our community that we will always provide a space for you to return to.
The Black Table Arts Cooperative is located about 6 blocks away from the Minneapolis Police 3rd Precinct that was burned down in the uprising following George Floyd's death. The proximity to this location was intentional.
I think grief presents an opportunity for connection, and art meets that need.
It also kind of changing the narrative of like there was so much negativity.
Alfred Sanders is the cooperative's director of operations. He's also a singer who plans to mentor and learn with other Black artists in this space, helping each other recover after a year that's put a lot of artists out of work.
With anything, you need a following, and just that this can be a great place for people to start their foundation, to get their following, or just practice their skills.
Art isn't the only draw for Sanders.
I lost my father with police brutality, very close to where George lost his life 20 years prior.
He hopes he will find healing here through art, while keeping his father's memory alive through connection. In South Minneapolis, Mariel Mose, WCCO 4 News.
The grand opening is tomorrow from 11 to 4. Anyone can come by for a COVID-safe tour and learn more about becoming a member. The co-op is looking for book donations to fill their library with Black authors. You can also help that space by fundraising and donating online, and we have more information about that.
Great, more of that mutual aid, right? Getting that to you. You know, one of the things that I think was specifically, you know, in that piece, which will actually be on our website too. You'll be able to go and to our summit page and watch all the videos from the next 2 days. But really creating this space for Black joy and for joy to be out loud. But you know, one of the things that I think I talked about in the beginning was how right now there's so much going on in the world, globally, well, nationally, obviously, and globally. That I think all of your work connects to in some way. I know that you in Black Table Art, even though it is a space and you created this space for Black people to have that seat at the table, you've been sort of working that intersectionality, that intersectional edge in the past few months or so, and opening your space to other communities who are really feeling challenged by this moment in time too. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do apologize. I have to head out to another meeting here soon. But it's just grateful to be here to speak with you all and to hear from the other panelists. Yeah. So at Black Table Arts, we always think, to be a responsible cooperative, we have to be a responsive one. And that means always standing ready for mutual aid and solidarity. That is what Tony K. Bombard would call a liberation impulse. How do we stand at the ready to be available across ethnic lines, across differences. And so for us, what that translated to, for example, when the tragic Atlanta shooting happened in our Asian and Pacific Islander community, needed space to sort of grieve and process in community. We made our space available while we were also grieving George Floyd. We did a community series called We Got Us. And we just made the night available, and it was a community gathering. We created a community altar. We did an art share. And one of the participants who attended that space spoke about this sort of sweetness in between, is what they said. And I thought that perfectly articulated what solidarity does, right? Sometimes I think we can be convinced that there's sort of narrow ways to go about the path of liberation, but solidarity kind of creates a kind of sweetness that says we can talk about any antagonisms between our communities if they're there, but we could also build, mutual aid and think about what it means to sort of show up to various front lines together. And art is just sort of a container, a sort of excuse for us to get together and see how we can talk about these ideas. So we did that for the tragic Atlanta shooting. And then we had a recent event a few days ago for our community in Palestine. And that was joyful as well. There was dancing, there was altars created. But again, I think it just speaks to that kind of joy is a collective project. And it's a project of solidarity. And our cooperative is always trying to stand ready to be available to that.
Yeah. I love that. We don't often hear the talk about the joy in that work. So I really appreciate really appreciate you all focusing on that and lifting that up. Thank you so much, Kino. I know you have to get going, but we will continue the conversation and keep that going. So thank you again. All right. Kino and Black Table Arts represent this movement that I'm really starting to see, and I love towards the more cooperative, structure for organizations, and so now I think another organization that we can talk about today is Root Springs. And this is a new space, about an hour. It's an hour and a half, right, or so from the Twin Cities, or
yeah, about an hour 15, hour and 20, depending on where you're coming from.
From the Twin Cities, but it's a retreat center. And Alejandra is one of the cooperative members of that retreat center. So Alejandra is someone that I've known for quite some time, a few decades now, which when I say that makes me feel older every time I say that. But Alejandra has this way of also making you feel young. So I won't dwell too much on the age there, but I will introduce you to Alejandra and the work that she is doing. And let me just go to the. All right, so Alejandra is. Let me Oh, there. So Alejandra is a queer immigrant organizer, creator, and performing artist who co-founded the People's Movement Center, which is a healing justice space centering BIPOC and LGBTQ bodies in South Minneapolis, Minnesota. She's a founding director at United Body Workers and Artists, and she's a board member of Indigenous Roots Cultural Arts Center, which is another organization we'll learn a little bit more about tomorrow. And as I said, a founding cooperative member with the Fields at Root Springs, which is the only Black Indigenous people of color run retreat center in Minnesota. That's very important. Alejandra brings 20 plus years of experience in creative placemaking, organizational development, facilitation, and training with communities across the country. Alejandra is a storyteller and body worker. She descends from the people of Chile and Mexico and lives on the unceded traditional territories of the Dakota people, St. Paul, Minnesota. So we have a lovely, lovely video about Root Springs. And so we'll play that now, so you learn a little bit about the organization and hear a little bit more about Alejandra's work in a minute.
It started with the power of imagination and boldly stepping towards our dreams. This is Root Springs, a retreat center on 36 acres of land, just 50 miles to the northwest of the Twin Cities. In the dead of winter, in February, 6 of us, 3 couples, boldly step forward to lovingly and respectfully steward the land, to reclaim our relationships with nature, to host our communities, to make art, to celebrate, to rest, to heal. Although it is now very cold, we look forward to things thawing around here. We are excited to learn the land's personality in each of its seasons. A spring-fed lake, a labyrinth, eco trails, a garden, a small orchard, a farmhouse and wellness center, and 3 hermitages, cottages that will host our guests. One at the rise of the hill, one in view of the lake, and one a geodesic dome that will henceforth honor an ancestor who dreamed us into the future, the Octavia E. Butler Dome. We look forward to your visits. Come and see us. Root Springs, a sacred space dedicated to healing and Black liberation.
That's so great. I think I could just watch that video. It's not cold anymore, thankfully, but you know, if you ever need to be warmed up, Aaron and Sharky's voice will definitely do that to you. And I can't wait to go check out that space this summer. So Alejandra, as I mentioned in your bio, you sort of marry this work, or maybe it's not even a marriage. Maybe there's no separation really between the artistic and the body work and that sort of healing work. So I wonder if you could talk about sort of your journey and that work that you do and how it led you to this space, this retreat center, and your cooperative partners really investing in that work.
Thank you for that. I got a little emotional just watching it. I think that there's something every time I think the words. What's that?
How can you not get emotional?
Yeah, there's something, I mean, there's the land really humbles when we're able to be with it. And that's one of the things that became really clear in regards to the specialness of this land, that we have boldly said yes to stewarding, and we're doing, you know, and we so the tangible kind of details. Well, let me just back up. So I'm so thrilled to be here with you all. Thank you so much for the gracious introduction, Damien. My work is very much colored by the way that my brain sees the world. My artist is one of the first, I feel like, lenses that I put on. I am a person living in a light-skinned body. And that affects my work. I am an immigrant and settler here, and all of that informs and affects my work. And so Root Springs is a healing project led and facilitated by artists that centers Black liberation and that centers land stewardship. And so we find that us purchasing this land and saying yes to being the official human stewards of this ecosystem, we did because we heard a call for space that was culturally relevant, that where we could rest, where we can exhale, where we could be with ourselves, where we could find, you know, and I invite you actually in this moment, wherever you are, just to feel the earth, to feel the place where you're at, and to just get a sense and grounding of your own body as our first home. Because finding nature so often, whether it's because of capitalism or white supremacy, is this thing where we have to go to. And there's such power in being in the natural that is within us. And in having the space to do so, and also the boldness to imagine outside of these oppressive systems that have so often been upon poor bodies, gender non-conforming bodies, bodies of color and culture. That there's space for our voice and for the wilderness within. And when you come to the land, and I really appreciated on the chat, there were some comments about y'all gonna need more cabins. And what's amazing about this land is that the land is a character in the story of coming to visit. So we actually have some zoning limitations on the land that actually, and we're organizers, and you know, we in less than 9-10 months, we bought 36 acres without having all of us good credit and There was enough of us that have been building this, you know, preparing themselves to show up strong in these systems that we had to navigate in order to do this work. And now we're navigating and these systems in a way that we are learning and sharing these learnings. And so our organizing is always within relationship. And so we are organized, you know, we bought these 36 acres again as artists, partially to make this resource available for community, and also as a part of a larger land-based movement. We are in concert and in relationship with other specifically Black-led land projects as a tactic, as a really important central aspect of the work. If we center Black liberation, you know, and I think I don't know if I said this earlier, but we will all get closer to freedom. We will all get closer to full liberation. And then, you know, and then in right relationship to the Native communities that have been here and continue to be here. And so one of the things that that happens on this land as well is we host a small sweat lodge community. So I feel like I'm gonna pause because I feel like now I'm just talking a little bit in circular, and I might have strayed from the original prompt. And so I'll just pause there.
No, I mean, that was great. That's all a part of the work. And I remember in talking with you before, you were thinking of this work this cooperative work that you and your partners did as a capitalism hack,
Yeah.
right? And I love that idea. And then just thinking of how capitalism uh, sort of lives and it's created and it's in this function of white supremacy. I feel like at this moment in time that capitalism hack is where it's at in a sense of like what we really need right now. So we need more people to be doing that work. I think. Um, and so I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about um, sort of the connection between the work at Blue Springs and some of those other organizers. I know tomorrow we'll hear from Junauda Petrus Nessa, who does Free Black Dirt, and I know that
That's
some of
right.
their work is connected to it too. Um, and
That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So and then how
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. That's fine.
We've got this is a little bit of a urban rural. I'm currently on the farm. And so there's a little lovely lag. And so we get to be transparent and run into each other a little bit as the signal kind of keeps going back and forth, giving us a little reality check about this 2D reality.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny because one of the things that I talked about a little bit in our virtual world is like culture within the virtual world and the ability that some cultures, like, and it doesn't put them off. It's talking over one another, and that's okay when that happens, right? So yeah, so that connection to Free Black Dirt and other organizations, you were saying, some of the people in the cooperative have been building up, preparing for this moment.
That's right.
Can you
That's
talk a
right.
little bit more about that?
Yeah, each of us have separate fires. We took this dive together and created a cooperative while farming. Understanding that within the paradigm that we didn't want to wait until we and our communities and our elders were food insecure. And so organizing with Pie Growers Collective is when we actually kind of saw things clearly enough to be able to take this risk and to be bold with community. Erin Sharkey, one of our team members, so there's six. We are 3 lesbian couples, 6 BIPOC women, individuals, bodies, who are doing this. And Erin Sharkey is one half of Free Black Dirt with Junauda. And so we are, each of us, we knew that we could do it together. And each of us continue to steward other really, really important fires that, again, really that feed the story of how the work develops and unfolds on the land. Zoe, also a phenomenal visual artist, and right now is doing some really critical work around pesticides. And it happens that in Wright County, our voice now being in multiple counties as organizers, and our voices start to carry different weights from different perspectives. And again, all in relationship, right? We're developing curricula. My wife, Sabi Labor, is running a company and developing, helping folks. And so the conversations that even are already starting to happen out here as we talk about chickens and do you want to, and about the all of the things that the land offers in a conversation and how we build and how we see symbolism in all of these things. And so, how is it that we can be present with the land and get out of the quote unquote rat race? And so even how do we start to think and access to talking about technology? How does our work live as an artist and as a performer? Like, what is theater post-pandemic? What is theater in the nature? All of the things happen to be here with us. The work of Indigenous Roots Cultural Arts Center, very much, it was one of the first things that Marianne from the center, she's like, so can you cut us off like a 5-acre situation so that we can do a clay-based lodge? And it's like, that it's not out of the question, right? And this is what's so amazing is the all of a sudden a lot seems possible when we're hanging out together and taking these risks and again collaborating and making big changes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that this is, I've been here for like nearly 30 years now, and I've heard the conversations about the need for a space like this outside of the city, and it's just so fantastic to see this work finally happening, and it appears to be just the right time,
Just the
again
time.
for a space like that, and for building, because there's a lot of building that I see going on, and what you're talking about there.
That's right. And and so many of though we are in Annandale, about an hour and 20 from the Twin Cities, the people that come here are Twin Cities. And
Mm.
so and it's so one of our main leaders, Signe Haraday, who also just stepped in as artistic director of Pillsbury House Theater. And so the all of the so exciting. And so how our work can also help bridge us into the nature. And one of the things that we did when we first launched is we actually invited a whole bunch of our BIPOC friends and said, hey, come stay on the land, because it happens that actually this area is known for its white supremacy, right? And so how is it that we continue to lean into the tensions of the inconsistencies, right?
Wow.
We want access to nature, and so much access to nature happens to be in rural settings, and rural settings had often been dangerous places in regard to quote unquote, right, in regards to just overt racism and who knows how we're going to feel and how we're going to actually be able to. So all of these conversations, how do we steward land and really understand that we're building generational wealth while simultaneously relating to the land as not part of the extractive economy, right? That the land isn't worth because it can be sold or repurposed or reused, but that the land, just as we are, is sacred and worthy because it is. Wow. And how, when we are in this resonant relationship with it, how it can heal us in all of these silent ways, with the song, the backdrop of the birds and the water.
Beautiful. Oh, I cannot wait to get out there this summer and bring the family. It's yeah, beautiful. Well, so some of the conversations obviously um, is about space. I mean, if we think about Black Table Arts and the space that Kino and his organization has created there, and then now Alejandra and her cooperative team with the rural space in Annandale, Minnesota. Now, David Hamilton is in a sort of different situation in terms of space. So this space is not a new space. It's a organization that has been around in the Twin Cities for over 30 years, and um, it's well known as uh, as a music venue, both here and around the world. And so David Hamilton took over this space in just a few years ago, and so let's learn a little bit about David, and then um, hear a little bit about the Cedar Cultural Center. Now, I've only known David for a few years personally, but I was a part of a program that I'm sure that he might bring up later, as an artist collective member, a new program that was set up in his first year at the Cedar Cultural Center. But David himself is the executive director. He's been there since 2018 and led the organization on a new organizational initiative including access for local artists of color, diversity and inclusion training, a commitment towards racial justice, and a new financial model which helped create a multi-year financial surplus for the organization. Previously, David served as the Director of Operations for Augsburg University's Center for Global Education and Experience, where he was awarded for his work developing the center's work in experiential education, social justice, and community engagement. As a qualified administrator for the Intercultural Development Inventory, the IDI, David has worked on many diversity and inclusion initiatives. As a former executive director of Access Work, David led a cutting-edge social service agency providing harm reduction services to at-risk populations. David has an MA in African history from the University of Minnesota and a mini MBA for nonprofit organizations. And David is also a fabulous jazz pianist. And as I said before, he doesn't talk about it a lot, but he is really talented. I've seen him play, and I hope I get to see him play some more now that things are opening up. So David, as I mentioned, is at Cedar Cultural Center, and let's learn a little bit about the center and watch that video, which again will be on our website, so you can watch it there in the future.
Se dice, mi de se dice, de si se de mi se di de mi ser exhibir. Desnuda ante ti, si soy así, fui así como así, yo soy así. Yo soy así. Yo soy así.
ساستنقم لكتفوت ميديون لتسنيت لدى الشكوى عناية ورني سنجي تسنة تبارد سكوز تران دغش النوان تنيري ساستنقم لكتفوت ميديون لتسنيت لدى الشكوى عناية ورني سنجي تسنة تبارد سكوز تران دغش النوان.
All right, so that is the Cedar Cultural Center, and David, you were kind of in a different position, as I said, than Alejandra and Kino, in that you took over a space that had been sort of a pillar of a sense, the space for world music, and obviously we've had conversations about what that means, world music. But it was sort of a different challenge that you faced in coming into an organization such as the Cedar that also is in this very unique community in Minneapolis that supports a lot of East African immigrants. It really is a sort of a center for East African immigrants on the West Bank, near the University of Minnesota and Augsburg College. So I wonder what challenges you face in sort of connecting the Cedar, this traditional institution, with that community, and what and sort of the shifts that you've made in the organization to make that happen, those connections happen. Oh.
Thank you, and great to be here. And I'm inspired by the work of my colleagues who just spoke, and I saw their videos. Yes, that is true. I inherited a very different situation, have a very different experience in my organization, because while my organization was known for presenting global music and working with bringing all these great artists from around the world, it has historically been an organization that was white-led. I was the first BIPOC person in a leadership position in the organization. And it was also an organization that was basically, you know, being at a point of being challenged by about who it was. You know, what does it mean for a largely white agency that's bringing artists of color to present them to largely audiences of color? And that was kind of a challenging reality of what global music has been marketed in and what it's become. So I was kind of at an interesting time and an interesting cross section of what the Cedar was thinking about in terms of being more diverse internally with its staffing. Now, when I was first hired, you know, I was known for my I was known for it, but I had a lot of experience doing intercultural development work, and that was a focus of what the Cedar is about and our mission. I said very clearly to staff and board that the Cedar is not in a position to do racial justice work at this time. We will try to be more intentional and mindful about our intercultural development work. How can we do more of what we're doing in a way that really ensures intercultural understanding? And we have the challenge of thinking, how do we bring more BIPOC audiences to the Cedar? One thing we started to do early on was the Artist Collective, which was to, it's hard to just transition an organization and hire all new staff and do all these new things. But one thing we did, which is not a substitute for hiring new, a more diverse staff, but it was to bring in BIPOC artists to curate for the Cedar and to advise the Cedar on ways to be more inclusive with the communities that it wants to represent. And it was a way to ask, not how do we reach these communities, but what do these communities want from us to be reached? How would they feel more comfortable working with us and attending our shows? And so Damien was one of those artists who worked with us and did some amazing things in our hall and gave us some amazing feedback, like he mentioned on the discussion with Global Music. So that started before George Floyd. I use George Floyd as a big pivot point in the work that we're doing now and the way of thinking, because it did allow us at that time to really be, I don't want to think we were being opportunists, but it was a time that we could get the support of funders, the community, our constituents, to do different work. I have an interesting story of a well-meaning white funder tell me when I was hired, don't forget about us older white people, we have a lot of the money. Now, she didn't mean it in a bad way, but now she's talking to me about racial justice work and is fully on board with that. So I'm just thinking about how blessed we were, about how the conversation shifted in the community, in our society, around understanding more about disparities. So we did go through a struggle, but I worked with the board to craft a racial justice statement. And I was very intentional that we make it about addressing disparities, because that's what racial justice is about. It's not about being anti-racist per se. It's about policies that directly change disparities and outcomes. And how can we do that? So we laid out initiatives to say that we have to have the board, at least 40% BIPOC. In a few years, we have to have the staff a certain level of BIPOC representation. And we have to present music and give access to artists in a different way. Now, the Artist Collective was doing that, but now we are in our focus of how do we do it in different ways. One way we immediately did it was we had started after the pandemic, we started a public access channel. And we immediately handed over to the Artist Collective. And one of the first programs was by Tu Saik Lee, who did a program on Hmong and Black solidarity from his perspective and experience. And it brought together Hmong and Black artists to talk about Black Lives Matter and how we can be in solidarity. Amazing programming we did, or he did. We would never have been able to do that without him. Another really important one was, another one of our first programs was Ifra Mansour, who built a traditional Somali-style hut on our plaza to do poetry readings and work with the elder. And it became a space for also the youth who were in our neighborhood to be a part of. And we did many interesting events. cross-generational on that plaza, and that a call through her where she was a bridge to us in the Somali community in a new way. Now, the Cedar had done a Minimo program for many years. So we had experience working in the Somali community and did kind of a groundbreaking program of bringing Somali artists from around the world to perform in the US for the first time and to do educational programming at various college campuses. Really great groundbreaking program. And we're keeping that going. I'll just mention a couple of ways and then pause. I mentioned how we lost our large federal funding for that program, but we had state funding to do music education for youth in the Somali Child Care Centers, which we just started back up today. And we're trying to expand that program. We started doing a Somali night with one of our artists every year. And of course, we do bring other Somali acts and want to continue to do that. But our Somali traditional night last year was the first time that some of the Somali artists performed traditional Berber dance styles in a non-wedding, non-traditional space that was a mix of Somali and non-Somali artists that came together, intergenerational artists too. And that was an amazing thing that happened at the Cedar. And now I mentioned that we are, in the previous conversation, that we are working on doing more work with the plaza and the youth, because we in order for the Cedar to move forward and survive, and I mean, of course, if our concern for the community is, we have to work with the youth in the community. And even though the Cedar is financially in a good place and strong, if our community as a whole is not and not supported and feels a part of the Cedar, then we are failing. So we're working at new ways to work with the community. We have some great new ideas that we're doing with that. I wouldn't say we got it all figured out. It's a work in progress. And so coming together and talking with other leaders in the audience here is a good way to think about and be upfront about the challenges we're going through in a public space, to learn from each other and to, give feedback.
Yeah, I love that what you said about the Cedar's financial health, and the fact that you could be as healthy as you want financially, but if you're not connecting to community and your community doesn't feel that they belong, then you're not doing the work. You're failing at the work. I believe I believe that to be true, for sure. I've been talking a lot and asking a lot of questions for a while now. I wanted to give an opportunity for our audience members to ask questions if you have any at this point. I didn't see any. I don't think I saw any in the chat. Lots of comments. Please tell me.
I just want to give a little shout out to everyone who's come on video, like every now and then. It's been lovely. I know that there's real people behind the boxes and only a tiny bit of shade for full off video. Only if willing and able. I know sometimes it's not possible.
We have this.
It's just lovely
time.
Yeah.
Whether it's better or not. Thank you.
Sure. If does anyone have any questions? I thought it was against the rules. There are no rules. Any questions for David or Alejandra? So there are none. Well, one of the things that we had started to talk about is the connection to our outer environment. So that might be the municipalities or counties that our spaces exist in. And Alejandra, you did talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing. Was it Rice County? I always forget I'm bad at the rural county.
Oh, that's okay. Wright County.
Wright County. There is a Rice County, but Wright County is what you said. And obviously, David, you being in Minneapolis and Hennepin County, and we talked a little bit about, what arts organizations or your organizations can do to really affect the change that's necessary in those places. Arts organizations hold that those stories, they hear the voices of the community most often, and really understand what the community needs and the desires of the community. So I wonder how that plays into your work going forward in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, or in Hennepin and Wright County.
Another question for myself or Alejandra?
For both of you.
I just finished speaking, so Alejandra, take it away.
Well, I think that it's, it's so funny. And I wonder, David, how you feel the edges, because this is the Cedar C3. Is it a nonprofit status?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting how these legal entities, how they hug us either supportively or a little restrictively in regards to some of the, at the end of the day, we're artists and human bodies doing the work of living and organizing together and trying to do it in a way that it just keeps spreading, but creating more and more space at the table, to give a little hats off to Kino. And I think that it's more and more, I think that the further we get in, any of us who dare to share our work kind of continuously out with community or in audiences or various performative, boxes and ways that we can share our art. I think that it's hard not to run into all of the policies that interact to either say, yes, you can light that candle in the theater, or it's kind of a tiny example, but I think that in regards to telling our stories of how we organize and how we make it so that there's just more freedom to be who we are. And so I think that, in doing our work, and again, being in relationship, understanding ourselves as a star in the galaxy of the human experience that is very much, encased and meshed with the natural world, that I think a shift of thinking and letting go of the hero story and of the one climax in regards to a Western storytelling, kind of thing, that there's that circulates, circular storytelling or sporadic ways of being, productivity, all of these things. There's a little bit of a veil having been lifted, I think, in some of these ways of what is possible, right? I'm so inspired, David, by your clarity of, because the other thing that also struck me in listening to Kino talk was about, it's not just that Kino and fellow organizers opened up their space for a solidarity action, is that they were in relationship with others in community, and they understood the relevance of opening up that space. And because many people like, oh, what's kind of the thing up in the air, right? That everyone, that if you don't say something about these kind of performative acts, versus transformational work and organizing. And so I think that the more that we slow down enough with each other and the breath and let that pregnant pause in the middle of the composition be a part of the interstitial fluid of the whole art piece, I think that the more just real we are with each other, and inevitably our capacity for changing these larger systems that are just no longer work for most of us, just seems like the thing to do.
Wow. Yes, that was beautifully said. I'm glad we're recording this. David, do you have more to add? I know that we're like at time, so I know that we have a lot, and you guys have contributed a lot to this conversation. But a short word, and then we're gonna we're going to close out. And if you missed part and you joined late, this will be on our website, so you'll be able to see it. It'll be on I Care If You Listen TV. It'll be on YouTube. So there's lots of places where you can go to access it. Let's go. Let's see. David.
Sorry, I was listening to Alejandra and I got taken away, and I was thinking,
It was
and I was like, what question are you asking me now?
It's okay. Yeah, we talked about it, and maybe that was like so beautiful, but that is the end. That's like that was clear. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists and our cohort members, Alejandra, Toba Alatis, and David Hamilton and Nikino Evo for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with us. And it is still our goal to keep this conversation going and be in community with these organizations as part of the community ourselves as ACF is. And as I said before, this conversation and the videos will be on our website for your viewing pleasure. And so check that out. Go to sign up for our newsletter for more information and visit our website, our events page for more that we have going on in the future. So I thank you all again. Thanks for coming out and spending your late afternoon with us. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow for the next half and the other part of this cohort. All right.
Thank you, Damien, for hosting, and ACF for all the work you've done.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Yes, Laura, thanks for your support. Thanks, everyone.